Fog rises from the Vltava at dawn, soft and pale around the Gothic bridges. Bells answer one another across the valley, while the first wagons roll over cobblestones still wet from night rain. This is Prague in the 1700s, the heart of Bohemia, a city rebuilding itself after wars and finding identity in art and curiosity. Long before nationalism or modern politics, Prague thrived as an idea that beauty could heal division. Here, faith learned the language of reason, and music became a kind of citizenship. The towers of Prague looked backward to the Middle Ages and forward to the Enlightenment at the same time. Prague spread across 7 hills, a patchwork of the Old Town, the Lesser Town, the Castle District, and the Jewish Quarter. The 30 Years' War had scarred it deeply, but by 1700 the city mended itself stone by stone. Roofers repaired spires, and fresco painters replaced smoke with angels. Merchants returned to the river markets. Barges carried salt and glass, and across the bridges flowed the endless rhythm of trade. The city was built from contradiction, narrow medieval alleys opening suddenly onto grand Baroque squares. People accepted this inconsistency as proof that survival was its own architecture. Under the Habsburgs, Prague stood proudly loyal, yet quietly independent. Vienna loved to call it provincial, but many Viennese students came north to learn theology or medicine in its calm universities. Governors represented imperial order, but guilds and monasteries handled daily governance. German, Czech, and Latin mixed naturally in street conversation. Under Empress Maria Theresa, the city grew visibly richer. New hospitals rose beside Jesuit churches, bridges were repaired, and the royal road repaved with granite from local quarries. Census takers recorded every resident for the first time, and the idea of a modern city administration was born among these winding medieval streets. The Clementinum, once a Jesuit stronghold, had become a citadel of knowledge. Its library glowed with golden light from tall windows, reflected in the brass of telescopes above. Astronomers studied comets, while monks wrote moral essays 2 floors below. Theology and geometry shared the same roof and the same silence. Scholars like Joseph Stepling and Jan Tesanek proved that the Enlightenment could wear a cassock. Their calculations traveled to Vienna, Warsaw, and Rome, notes carried by riders through mountain passes faster than the empire's own military post. In Prague, learning was devotion refined. Music ruled every season. Churches filled with choirs for feast days, while taverns kept small orchestras for weddings or market fairs. Bohemian composers such as Zelenka and Tuma wrote masses that sounded almost theatrical. The city loved contrast, sacred drama and secular joy, echoing each other across the river valley. By mid-century, visitors wrote that Prague sang rather than spoke. When Mozart arrived in 1787, the audience understood him immediately. They had been waiting for such freedom in sound all century. Even street musicians played minuets beside folk songs, and no one saw contradiction in that harmony. Yet the city never lost its taste for secrets. Legends of alchemists survived like perfume, lingering after a guest leaves. Children pointed to old cellars where furnaces once glowed, and merchants sold small metal globes as souvenirs of vanished sorcery. This memory of magic did not resist reason. It protected imagination. Modern chemistry and astronomy grew out of these myths as if the city had willed its fantasies into science. To be rational in Prague was to admire wonder with better instruments. Architecture gave visible form to recovery. After floods or fires, citizens rebuilt with faith and pride. The Diensenhofer family transformed narrow lanes into processional vistas crowned with domes. St. Nicholas Church towered above the lesser town, its music of curves answered by carved facades glowing pink and cream. Builders treated every reconstruction as confession, every column as gratitude for survival. When travelers crossed the bridge from the imperial castle to the old town, they entered what seemed a theater designed by hope itself. Most citizens were artisans or traders. Families worked and slept in the same rooms. Workshops smelled of wax, leather, and paint. Women managed food stalls, inns, and cloth shops. Widows often inherited workshops and kept them running with apprentices. Sunday brought not only mass but markets and coffeehouse debates. Evenings were warmer than one might imagine. Wine, gossip, and candlelight reflecting off brass instruments. Winters were harsh, but community life endured through humor. To live in 18th century Prague meant to know every neighbor by both trade and song. Coffeehouses multiplied after 1720, each with its own personality. One near the Charles Bridge served students, another by the Clementinum drew scholars reading copied essays from Paris. The smell of roasted beans meant access to the world. Pamphlets lay beside chessboards. Musicians read philosophy. Priests corrected pamphlets but kept them. Education no longer belonged only to institutions. In Prague's cafes, knowledge became a social sport, played between cups and candle stubs. In the Jewish quarter, life balanced reverence and resilience. Narrow lanes echoed with presses printing Hebrew commentaries and German translations side by side. Scholars wrote treatises in cramped rooms warmed by printing press fire. Tolerance under Joseph II allowed new guilds and trade. When a fire destroyed part of the quarter in the 1750s, rebuilding began under joint contracts between Jewish masters and Christian masons, rare cooperation in that century. The legend of the golem survived only as story, but it gave children pride. Their city's myth was one of protection, not fear. Prague's wealth rested more on art than conquest. Bohemian glass workshops produced chandeliers shipped to Versailles. Instrument makers along the Hradčany quarter supplied half the orchestras of Central Europe. Market squares glowed with goods from every province: salt, honey, linen, paper, puppets. Each object carried the rhythm of hands. The more the empire centralized, the more Prague thrived on individuality. Visitors from Venice admired how every shopfront looked theatrical yet practical. Industry began quietly within craftsmanship, an enlightenment of the wrist as much as of the mind. The calendar was measured in celebrations. During Easter, processions crossed both banks of the river with candles floating like small suns. In summer, aristocrats opened palace gardens to citizens for masked concerts. Children chased fireworks reflected in the water. Boatmen anchored midstream to watch. Carnival brought satire, and comedians disguised criticism as laughter. Music, religion, and humor became the city's democratic trinity. The empire may have owned Prague on paper, but the people owned its joy. Maria Theresa's compulsory schooling order reached Bohemia by 1774. Within 10 years, most children in Prague could read simple catechisms and count money. Female literacy rose quickly because mothers supervised homework while running shops. Booksellers began lending novels for a few coins a week. Reading became fashionable, then habitual. When Joseph II decreed freedom of worship and curtailed censorship, pamphlets flooded the streets. Citizens discussed rights and reason in ordinary speech. Reform arrived neither by barricade nor sermon, but through vocabulary. To name injustice was the first resistance. By the 1780s, foreign painters and musicians discovered that Prague offered audiences without arrogance. Italian set designers, French engravers, and German organ builders mixed with Bohemian poets. Noble patrons opened salons where symphonies premiered beside debates on astronomy. Even the police, ordered to report on suspicious gatherings, recorded mostly music and mathematics. The city became a conversation disguised as entertainment. When Mozart's Don Giovanni premiered, its moral complexity felt familiar. Prague understood that reason and passion share the same stage. Domestic interiors mirrored the city's mix of modesty and ambition. Middle-class women embroidered not only linens, but political verses hidden in patterns of flowers. Servants carried gossip like currency. Landlords doubled as informal bankers. Marriage contracts included clauses for education funds, and widows ran coffeehouses or boarding rooms for foreign students. Through such quiet management, women shaped the city's daily rhythm. The Enlightenment in Prague had many voices, but half of them spoke from behind shop counters or kitchen doors. By 1790, Prague remained faithful to the crown, but aware of its own maturity. Students read French newspapers and compared them to Habsburg decrees. Booksellers whispered about liberty. Yet the revolution in Bohemia remained peaceful, expressed through criticism, art, and translation. The walls of St. Nicholas heard Haydn's masses. Nearby taverns echoed with folk songs soon labeled national. Without realizing it, Prague was composing the overture to the Czech revival that the next century would complete. Prague in the 1700s was Europe in miniature, religious yet rational, loyal yet defiant, ancient yet reborn. Its churches and cafes, observatories and taverns all played movements of the same symphony, the attempt to live wisely without losing wonder. Walk through its reconstructed streets, and you can still sense that rhythm. Bells from St. Nicholas replying to the hum of conversation along the Vltava. This was a city that survived war by becoming music, that turned memory into progress, and that proved the Enlightenment could be kind.